All right, so I have continued to think about what we can know. I already have one video giving a real quick take on it, but part of what has really stuck with me about it is just the disappointment with the opportunity in the book, and I had this thought about a way to connect it to another work that I think had a really similar topic and a really similar variety of ambition, but delivered in a way more satisfying way, at least as far as I'm concerned. And so that other work is the movie Inception. So Inception and What We Can Know are both highly conceptual, and they are dealing with this idea of knowability. So it's like, kind of like the epistemological, like philosophical sense of what you can and can't know. But it talks about, or the way that I experience both of those two works is that it kind of like digs into the idea of knowability in a propositional way, like what are just the facts, but also in like a psychological way. And that's kind of a combination of like the interpretive nature of every kind of a fact, the impact on personhood that factual information has, and the way that like relatedness or perspective changes what seems like immovable propositional facts, how those things actually are a little bit slipperier than you might think whenever perspective and relationship become an element of them. Another thing is kind of like emotions and knowledge, and thinking and feeling, how they're related, how they're different. And that's one of the things that, at least for the last several years of my life, has been one of my favorite types of themes in any kind of like work of art or literature, or, painting, book, movie, song, is that idea of the overlap between factual stuff and emotional stuff, and then what an emotional fact is or what a factual feeling is and stuff like that. And I think that's definitely an element in both of those two stories. Here's one of the ways that the two are very different, I think, though, is in the world building. So you talk about like a complicated and ambitious world that you're trying to build in Inception, like so much of it takes place inside of people's dreams, and you have to buy into this kind of science that even makes that whole idea believable. And again, for my dollar, I feel like Inception nails it, and it's a very immersive and believable world that was not hard for me to get lost in, even though I didn't totally understand all the details. And in some respects, not having every single detail described to me is part of what made it work. It's part of why Inception is science-y, but not really like science fiction, because it doesn't have like the almost like like indulgence in the detail that some science fiction works have, that makes it more about just like how fun the details are, and less about the story itself. What We Can Know is also kind of similarly science fiction-y, but doesn't totally feel like a straight up science fiction work. But, and this kind of relates to what I said in my last video, I'm just not believing that world, It feels like it's a world where it's projections of the author's current political view, not a world that's built on its own merits and can stand up on its own merits. And that's a bummer. And it's, I think it'd be an interesting thing to talk about, is just like kind of the role of political thought in world building, not so much the idea of like writing a political theme into a work, because that's an interesting thing to think about too, but also when you try to have like politically motivated statements that are part of like the reality you're trying to create, that can get complicated. And yeah, so that was one of the things that was tough about it. That world didn't seem believable because I just felt like I kept thinking about how the author was trying to make a statement, and it would pull me out of the world, So anyway, I don't know if I might be being like vaguer than I mean to be, but I was just thinking about this as I was driving down the road, and I thought I kind of want to capture some of these thoughts. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to tell me. But yeah, that's kind of my take, another take on what we can know. And if you haven't thought about it already, maybe see if you have any thoughts about how it relates to the themes in the movie Inception.